Writing is horribly complicated. It is quite common for writing practitioners to hear such complaints from students, colleagues, or indeed anyone else who engages in writing longer texts. When writing ourselves, we might even join in this complaint when things are not going as well as we think they should. But even in our better moments, as writing practitioners and researchers, we will always agree that writing is, at least, complex. Its complexity is reflected in the many different perspectives on writing, as a process, as a product, as social interaction, as a form of self-expression. These perspectives are almost as numerous as the disciplines that produce research into writing. For writing practitioners, these manifold approaches can represent an embarrassment of riches. They offer us many valuable insights into the phenomenon we are teaching. But, at the same time, they also create a number of challenges. The first challenge is the sheer quantity of relevant research that is available. Researchers who develop their expertise in a specific area can dedicate the majority of their time and energy to keep abreast of new developments in their field. For writing practitioners who dedicate a significant amount of time to teaching, even keeping up to date in a single area of research can be a struggle. How could they maintain an overview of insights from different fields, even if this could benefit their understanding of writing and thus their teaching? Beyond the sheer quantity of relevant research, the variety of concepts and terminology used in different disciplines is a challenge. Not being familiar with these makes it much harder to read relevant literature and to understand and connect ideas from it. Writing practitioners rooted in different disciplines, using different terminology, might also struggle more to communicate with each other. In our work, we try to address these problems by creating a new model of the writing process. Unlike previous models, our work does not disseminate new and original insights. Instead, our model aims at making existing insights from multiple disciplines accessible to writing practitioners. The model does this by synthesizing the insights gained in different fields into a coherent, comprehensive overview of writing as the decision-making process through which writers communicate with others around them. In contrast to mainly research-oriented work, our teaching-focused model emphasises the way in which different aspects of writing are integrated into an overall framework. It also tries to use terminology that is familiar to writing teachers and writers where possible. Sometimes it is unavoidable that this approach means we have to sacrifice some of the subtleties and nuances from the literature. As an evidence-based model, it is important to us, however, that our representation remains closely informed by current research and can act as a gateway to original publications. Our model should help writing practitioners, and perhaps researchers as well, to focus on some dimensions of the writing task without forgetting that these dimensions belong to a complex system. Doing this in a paper-based 2D diagram would have been impossible. Using a digital interactive format, on the other hand, we can create different levels that allow those who use the model to see an uncluttered overview of the way in which the different components interact. If they would like to find out more about a specific aspect, they can zoom in or click on an individual icon to reveal further detail. We hope that such an evidence-based, teaching-focused and visual model of writing can address the challenges we mentioned before. In fact, we think it might be able to do more than give writing practitioners greater access to research and facilitate communication among them. Perhaps writing practitioners could also use it when negotiating with their subject teaching colleagues how writing interventions could be embedded into their programmes of study. And if the aim of our teaching is to give students greater control over their writing process, even our teaching could benefit from a visual tool that shows students how this process works. But what does this teaching-focused model look like? The overview of the model places the writer's decision-making in context. This context is vital if we see writing as communication, as a social act. Written texts possess what Guy terms the magical property of language. When writers want to communicate successfully, they need to stay within the limits of what is socially acceptable in that situation. Yet, every act of writing contributes to creating these same social conditions. In other words, text and writers are influenced by the world, but through their writing they in turn have an impact on the world. The potential reasons for writing and the accumulated shared experience of discourse communities at the top of the model represent the influences on the text. They are also visible in the musings of the little writer. If she wants to describe the scene where the ghost of Hamlet's father reveals that he was murdered, how could she build on things her reader already knows? The idea that ghosts can be dead people who return to haunt the living is probably more relevant than images of Ghostbusters, for example. The example shows that her description will depend on what she assumes her audience already knows. She will also need to take into account what is considered appropriate in the given context and what impression she would like the audience to gain of her. Because when her text is read, it can add to the shared knowledge of the discourse community and the writer's role in it. If she wants to establish her academic credentials, for example, and makes good choices, her reader is likely to see her as a scholar. The decisions our writer takes might be influenced and influence social factors, and as writing practitioners, we need to teach our students about these influences. But they are still taken by a writer, and we also need to teach them how to improve their decision-making when they are writing. Flower and Hayes refer to these decisions as a set of distinctive thinking processes which writers orchestrate or organise during the act of composing. These processes are represented within the brain at the centre of the model. At the heart of all these processes are the writer's goals and her idea of the audience. These are influenced by the external world, but each writer is going to interpret the situation a bit differently. During the writing process, writers need to compare their possibilities to the constraints imposed by their goals and the audience. What are their rhetorical options? What is available in terms of content? For more complex writing tasks, there is no easy fit between the requirements of goals and audience and the available options that leads to a simple solution. Here, a problem-solving approach is required, which Bereiter and Scardamalia call knowledge-transforming writing. Negotiating between the different constraints and possibilities is a complex cognitive task that requires a high level of deliberate, strategic control. But if the process is managed successfully, writers can gain new knowledge through it. This negotiation between constraints and possibilities is at the heart of all three decision-making processes in writing, which are represented within the brain. The first of these processes is planning. The result of the planning process is a high-level plan, but this could be anything from a pre-linguistic initial idea to a more detailed set of notes. If writers take notes on their plans, they are technically writing, but their plan is produced mainly for themselves. Drafting, the second process, is concerned with putting ideas into visible language that might become part of the text. Not everything written down initially will remain in the text though, and the decision about what remains unchanged and where changes are necessary is made in the third process, revising. When writers revise what they have written, they start with the specific textual options they have chosen and then compare them to what they need to achieve their goals and to communicate better with their audience. To show this different point of departure, Bereiter's and Scardamalia's process is reversed in revising. It can be assumed that any act of writing starts with at least some form of rudimentary planning, but once this is underway, writers will switch regularly between the different processes. This shifting needs to be coordinated, and different researchers have used many different terms for this. In the model, we call the part that is responsible for our coordination the control room. Good control over the three processes and efficient coordination of them are essential for successful writing, and understanding their role better could perhaps help to identify practices that are less helpful. But knowing about the type of decisions writers need to make and the processes they can use is not enough for successful writing. Writers' decision-making can also suffer when it is not informed by relevant skills and knowledge. This is why we have added skills and knowledge to each process. If a writer does not know anything about the audience's ability to process information, for example, it is unlikely she will be able to select what information will be necessary for her audience or in which order they will find it easiest to follow her argument. This short outline of the rationale behind our work and the model we have created can only touch on the surface. More detailed information can be found on the website, and we're looking forward to discussing the potential use of it in much more detail in Antwerp.